Ago Medasi. Ago Medasi. Just a little West African Fanti for you on a Sunday afternoon. Just saying, your attention, please. Your attention, please. Welcome. Hello. Greetings, everybody out there. Hope you all are doing well. Hope you're able to maintain your highest level of mental, physical, and spiritual well being and health. We are so happy to have you with us on this Sunday for this critical topic, organizing 101. Ready to begin? Steps to start the actual work. And if you don't know, this session, last week's session, if you were here or not here, and next week's session, these three sessions are all sessions where we're taking from the book that I just wrote and published in February, that's shown in the upper right hand corner of your screen here. A guide for organizing defense against white supremacist, patriarchal, and fascist violence. And as I said last week, and Shukura told me afterwards she really liked this. I didn't write the book for people to get it, read it individually, and just gain intellectual knowledge for yourself, and drink wine and eat cheese and crackers with it. The purpose of this book is to provide a toolkit for people to get organized. My objective here as an organizer for the All African People's Revolutionary Party, of which Shukura and I both are affiliated with, is to use this book as an organizing mechanism to get people to see the importance of organization and the fact that until we prioritize getting organized, we're never going to be able to get the forces of oppression off of our back. And a lot of you, most of you are very well intentioned. You mean well. We know you mean well. And you say, yeah, I understand, we need organization. But I really don't think you do understand. And that's why we continue to harp on this theme. And we will continue to harp on it until, we begin to utilize practices that demonstrate that we understand the necessity to get organized. I'll give you an example, and this is not to throw shade at any human being, because all of us are works in progress. But a lot of people tell me all the time, well, yeah, I've engaged in organizing work for years. Yeah. But as someone who has actually done that, there are things that people do that demonstrate to me immediately whether they have or not. Like, for example, every week, and again, it's not to throw shade, it's just an example. Every week, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes before this program starts, people contact me. Hey, I lost the login information. How do I log in? Now, to untrained eyes, they might say, well, what's the big deal about that? But the reason why I'm mentioning it is because when you do this work, like, I would never contact anybody. If I didn't take the time to get the information before that, then I would just figure out how to do it on my own. But I would not reach out to you, the people organizing the event, 10 minutes before the event, because I know from experience you have so much going on during that time period. The last thing you need is to have to deal with me and my disorganization. So little things like that, like, demonstrate to me that people, folks mean well, but we do not have the necessary skills and experience to do the work that we need to do to get free. So that's the reason for last week's session based on the book, and today's session, and then next week's session, to talk about the basic things that we all love to act like we understand, but we don't really think we understand. And to reiterate that and to encourage us to start practicing these things, because they will help us raise our level of organization. So we start, as we always do, by giving thanks and acknowledgement to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, however they define themselves. And we're talking about the real indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, the American Indian people, the Native people, the Chicanos, the Mexicanos, the Puerto Ricanos. These are the folks who are indigenous to this Western Hemisphere, not Africans who are confused and uninformed about Africa, and because of that have fallen victim to racist narratives about Africa, and so are trying to create fairy tales to replace what we just don't have the discipline to study and learn for ourselves. We're African people. I debate this with people all the time, and I have yet to meet anybody who says, who's African, who says they're not African who knows anything about Africa. So that's all I need to know that this is a scam, and it's something we need to just struggle against. So we're talking about respect for the real indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. We always demonstrate that, and we stand in 100% solidarity with them in their anti-colonial struggle to be free and gain this land base back. This is their land. It does not belong to you. Stop saying whose streets are streets. These aren't your streets. You're a thief if you say that. These are the streets of the indigenous people. These are the mountains, the rivers, the lakes, the streams, everything, pathways of the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. And as I already alluded to, we always give thanks to our African ancestors. If you're of African descent and you're here, or what they call Black, and you're standing here today, that's because your ancestors took a sword for you, a knife for you, a musket for you. They did that so that you could stand here today. They did not do that so you could stand here and disrespect them by declaiming your connection to them. That is an absolute disgrace for those of you that do that, or anybody you know that does that. That is absolutely disgraceful. And all you do when you do that is embarrass yourself and bring dishonor on yourself. You're not bringing dishonor on our glorious African ancestor. You're certainly not doing that. You're not bringing dishonor on our glorious mother Africa. You're just bringing dishonor on yourself because you're demonstrating that you don't have enough respect for yourself to even find out who you actually are, African. So these are the things we have to correct. And that's why we do this. So we are real happy that you're here today to talk about ready to begin, organizing to start the actual work, organizing 101. And we always begin it with just our introductions. This, again, these workshops are sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, and I'm a longtime organizer for the A-APRP. I've done work for the A-APRP all over the world and will continue to do so, including these workshops here, along with a lot of other things, for as long as I have breath in my body. And joining me, as is the case every week, is my amazing daughter, Shukura, who grew up in the A-APRP and continues to finish up her doctorate work on another part of this plantation. She will become the first member of our family to do so. And so we do this every week. We interact every day. Sorry to disappoint you if you want to see African fathers that are absent. Sorry to disappoint you if you want to see African fathers and their children who are estranged and disrespectful towards each other. You're in the wrong place if you expect to see that here. We have a loving relationship. We are far from perfect, but no one else is. But we are struggling, and we have been for decades, and will continue to for the rest of the time we have together, to build on our relationship of mutual love and respect on all levels. So just honored to be able to do this with her every week. And then again, the objective of the A-APRP is Pan-Africanism, you all. Pan-Africanism, which we define as one unified socialist Africa. One unified socialist Africa. Kwame Nkrumah's book on the right, The Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, lays out the strategy to achieve revolutionary Pan-Africanism by uniting all the groups on the ground in Africa who agree with our objective, Pan-Africanism, and define it as one unified socialist Africa. So you see logos from many organizations, the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, or what you call South Africa, the African Party for Independence of Guinea-Bissau, PAIGC, Amilcar Cabral Ideological School in Nigeria, many others that we work hand in hand to build this fighting capacity, of which we will most certainly accomplish. And then finally, we have chapters everywhere on earth where African people are, and relationships with other liberation movements like the Palestinian National Liberation Movement, Filipino National Liberation Movement, Irish National Liberation Movement, and as we mentioned, the struggle of indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere in their struggle to unite and reclaim their lands. So we are so glad to have you here with us. Thank you for joining us. And to get us started, I will turn it over to Shukura.
Thank you so much, Daddy. I just wanted to piggyback off of you really quickly before we jump into these slides, and talking about why it's really important to study who you are, to know who you are, and most importantly, I would say, to be willing to study and to accept that you are in fact African, right? Like, why is that important? So I'm just asking you all, those of you who do believe that you did not descend from Africa, that's a very absurd thought for me personally, because I guess my question to you would be, how did you become who you are? So we could talk physically, like how did you get to the Americas? We could talk emotionally, we could talk mentally. Where did you get all the values and morals that you have? And so, yes, I'm sure your parents or your grandparents, whomever raised you, had a lot to do with that. But then my question would still be, and this is so funny because I watched the video where Kwame Ture was having the same argument, was where did your grandparents get those values, and where did their grandparents get it? And so the point I'm trying to make to you is how you appear, your body in terms of who you look like, your nose, your facial structures. If you believe that when you are passionate about something, your voice elevates, and other people might argue you are quote unquote being loud, when in actuality, you're just showing passion about something, how you look at things, how you might really be more collective than you think you are, because Africans by design are not individualistic. That's not who we are as a people. That only started really coming about when we came to the Americas and were colonized to understand that we should be selfish. So I guess my question to you would be, are you so afraid of learning about who you are? Because it is going to cause you to be uncomfortable when you learn some things that you probably didn't know were the truth. But that's the reality. And why wouldn't you want to learn who you are? It means you would have a more closer connection with understanding who you are supposed to be. Because you can't know who you are supposed to be if you have no idea where you've come from. And if you have no idea where you've come from, then that means you don't know who your ancestors were to develop you and to help you grow into the person you are today. And are you doing a service to them? Are you proud? Do you want your ancestors to be proud of you? I don't mean to be too philosophical today. I'm just trying to help you all understand. We have to erase this idea that being African is a bad thing. We really have to erase that, because it's detrimental, not just to ourselves, it's detrimental to our children, it's detrimental to the future generations, it's detrimental to us doing this work. And by being completely honest, it's getting in the way of doing the work, because you can't do the work if you don't know who you are. And so that's like a personal thing that you kind of need to work through, because we need you to be ready, which means we need you to understand that you are in fact African. We need you to understand Africa is oppressed, and we need you to help us figure out how to get colonizers out of Africa, how to get capitalism out of Africa, so that we all can understand that that means oppression for everyone will go away magically. Okay, so we need you all to be on point with that, which means doing some self-healing, however you need to do that. All right, and I'm actually going to talk more about self-healing a little bit later today, so stay tuned for that. All right, so just to review from last week's seminar, when I teach for my college students, I always try to bring them where we were and then talk about where we're going to go today, and then kind of tie that in as we continue on with the lesson. So just in case you missed last week, or maybe you weren't paying attention, or maybe you just need a refresher because you had a busy week, we talked about the timeline of organizing and how it's shown us that building organizations or work studies starts with a couple of people. So we really don't need this notion that you need to have 50 people or 75 people. Eradicate that, get that out of your brain. You really just need two willingly bodied, able people. And I'm sorry, I keep saying willingly bodied, but they can be differently able, just two people who are willing to have some conversations that might get a little uncomfortable, but they're willing to grow and learn from that. That's what we need. So you need two people who are willing to take, for example, your first work study. And again, remember the first work study for the A-APRP, if you have your book, it's from page 11. So that was Kwame Nkrumah, Amilcar Cabral, Kwame Ture, and Lamin Jenga. All right. And so we talked about 6 steps altogether. So step 1 relates to this slide, where it talks about how you want to start your organization with a collective vision with other like-minded people. And I'm going to talk in just a second about how that vision becomes a reality. The second step is you want to establish the plan of how you're going to reach the vision and whatever strategic methods you need to get that vision into the reality it needs to be. All right. So as we're thinking about that, I want you to remember, so this means now you need to work through how you will approach the neighborhood you wish to work in. So do you already have buy-in with that neighborhood? Are you already connected with that neighborhood somehow? How do you decide where you're going to go? What do you decide is the criteria you're going to use for how you approach the individuals that are affiliated with that organization? I'm sorry, that neighborhood. How would you go about researching the answers to these questions? Who would you talk to? Would you talk to someone who's affiliated with that neighborhood? Do you already have connections because maybe your grandparents still own property in that neighborhood? Who can be resources to you? Not what, but who can be resources to you? What are some people who maybe are displaced, but they still have connections because they still have cousins that live there, or they still have relatives that take food to shelterless people every Saturday in that neighborhood? What are the connections that you have that are actual bodies that you can use to help get you into that neighborhood so that you can start to develop A, what the problem is, and most importantly, B, the solution, which is the vision and how you're going to go about addressing the problem. This means that you need to discuss with comrades the specific focus of your work in order to determine where, what, and how. And I want you to remember to check in with yourself emotionally. This is that self-healing part I was speaking about. Make sure that you're checking in with yourself emotionally. We talked about this last week as well, because we need to make sure that you're rested and capable of investing in this work. I just want to be very clear. I feel like we've said this before, but starting an organization is beyond laborious. It's not easy. It's not something that can happen overnight. I definitely want us to think about the labor part of beginning an organization. It's not something that you can do by yourself, which is why we're encouraging this collective approach. And you shouldn't want to do it by yourself, because no offense, but you don't have all the answers. We need to work together because we all bring different things. We all have different experiences. We all have read different materials and have a different level of knowledge that we can contribute and use, hopefully, to destroy capitalism and enhance the masses of people. So that means we need to check in with one another, because you know things that I certainly don't know. And I humbly would like to think that I know things that I can maybe help and contribute so that we can all make this world a better place. So that means you have to make sure that you save all your energy so that you can effectively build the foundation that you need to grow this organization. Remember that your organization can be a basis for you to regenerate strength and remind you of why this work matters. It can be a place to foster love and commitment. It does not just have to be a place where you simply discuss readings, implement PE, and implement positive criticism and self-criticism. I truly believe that a safe space and a love foundation will organically develop, because as you engage in discussions, PE, critical analysis, reflection, and criticism, you become vulnerable and humble, because there's so much that we just don't know. And the beautiful thing is that we learn it together. We're all learning in work study. That's the beautiful part about that. No one is supposed to be the instructor. No one is supposed to be the teacher. It really contradicts this capitalist Western educational approach we have been come to socialize to understand, because we're all on the same collective tier of contributing and understanding that we are expected to contribute, right? So there's literally a part of the agenda where we check in to make sure all people spoke, okay? And then beyond that, there's no, oh, well, so-and-so has a PhD, so they can talk to us more about this. Not necessarily. So-and-so could not have done any community work and not know the first thing about enhancing an organization that starts with picking your neighborhood. So-and-so needs to learn from Rashida, and Rashida needs to learn from Jaquez, and Jaquez needs to learn from Abraham. And we all need to come together to understand that we're all responsible to make this world a better place for African people, for poor people, for indigenous people. And that's why these organizations need to be started and created. That's why they need to be given life so that we can go about doing that. So for this week, we'll be discussing how to further sharpen building the vision and the plan with your comrades. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we understand that we need to figure out how we're going to make our entrance into the neighborhood, right? So then from there, we're going to start to hone in on what the problem is. And I think for those that are thinking, well, how can I decide what the neighborhood is? You might have to switch these two slides around. Maybe you need to think about what the problem is, and then that'll help you associate. This problem really associates with the 38119 zip code, whereas that problem really associates with the 95822 zip code. And then from there, you're able to decipher and decide which neighborhood you really want to contribute and focus on more, because that is the problem you want to tackle. So however you need to give this rhyme or reason for deciding what the problem is, AKA that's going to be the neighborhood you focus on, do what you have to do. But keep in mind, step 3 does remind us from last week that this organization needs to decide what they want to focus on. So how will the vision be accomplished? What is the realism of reaching the goal as a whole? Is it feasible? Does it need to be adjusted? Does it need to be adapted? Does it need to be considered differently because of weather permit, inclement weather or things like that. We just need to be mindful and try to be as organized as possible about figuring out how all those things can get in the way. This also means at this point, you're creating a reading list and a discussion, you have assignments, and you're developing a writing analysis. And then you also have step 4 with this particular focus, where you are collectively deciding what your meeting times are and things like that. Because now you have a neighborhood, which means you need to start meeting with your other comrades so you can start talking about the problem in said neighborhood, which is why developing these meetings, these structured meetings, developing what time of the week you all are meeting, what day of the week you all are meeting. Like I said, is it going to be virtual? Do you alternate? Is it face-to-face in the park where you're masked up? What does all that look like? Those are the kind of things you want to flush through. And this is important because as a group, you're developing a vision and a plan. So you're establishing that this is a problem, and then you're developing the vision, which is the solution and how you go about addressing that. And of course, the plan and how you execute getting rid of the problem, right? So you might start discussing things with one another where you might want to consider what the problems are that you want to see fixed, and make sure that that really is a collective list. You can literally start naming problems, and maybe someone can have a Google Doc open if you all are meeting virtual or if you're meeting in face-to-face. And so one person is typing on this Google Doc, but you all have access to it because we know the Google Docs are simultaneous. So you all can see this collective list being built literally in front of your eyes, right? Like we need to use, I forgot what my dad called it, but we need to use capitalist resources to benefit the masses of people. So use technology to help enhance your organization and make it grow stronger, right? So you're creating this collective list, and be inclusive of a range of things. So do a majority of the children in the neighborhood lack having functioning internet, even though majority of children in the US and in the world are doing distance learning? So the question obviously would be, how are they going about learning in school if they don't have internet? Is that the problem you want to address? Are women identifying people having difficulties finding support due to abusive predators in the community? Is childcare an issue for women identifying people and for families? Are there a majority of communities that are suffering from chronic disease or high blood pressure? Is there a drug dealing problem that needs to be addressed? Try to incorporate how infrastructure can lead to this problem. So really, really think about that. And if you need some help with that, I can give you a quick example. Here in Memphis, we have some of the oldest power grids and some of the oldest water pipes, literally like in the face of the world. And so why is that a problem? That's a problem because every time there's a storm, which is literally once a month, if that, and I mean like severe thunderstorm, like trees knock down, power out, people without power in summertime, which is unthinkable because you have elderly people who don't have functioning air conditioning. So some of them are not able to survive because their houses are too hot. So it really is a serious thing. But why are the power grids so old? And also, why are our water pipes so old? We had a winter storm in February and the water pipes were so damaged, we had to do a hot water boil advisory for about 3 weeks afterwards because there wasn't enough water pressure in the water. And they were worried that diseases and parasites would develop, which I learned that's where water pressure comes in, is to help narrow that down or reduce it. So if you don't have water pressure, then you're more likely to get sick drinking the water. And I personally do drink the water here in Memphis because it's clean and it's built on top of an aquifer, but that's neither here nor there. My point is infrastructure can have a lot to do with derailing your organizational developmental plan. So you want to think about all that stuff. Of course, I say infrastructure, but what if there's another pandemic? Like just think about how all these things can play in. I mentioned inclement weather before. I really want you all to tease that out and try to be as organized as you can about thinking through how that can impact you all's ability to meet on a collective basis, decide what your problem is going to be that you want to focus on, and then of course, figuring out how to address that vision. So if you think about what the problems are that you as a collective feel are unacceptable, does the community suffer from a threat or a lack of resources? And if you're stuck and if you can't figure out which problem you want to focus on, sadly, there's so many, right? So maybe you're stuck on figuring out which one. Think about what our elder ancestor organizations have already done. Think about how they've paved the way for us. So use them as a reference. Use other organizations and borrow ideas from them if you need support. Shout out to the A-APRP Portland chapter. That's the picture on the far left that you see. I think even the middle and the third picture, if I'm not mistaken. They started a breakfast program in Portland. And we know that our family, the Black Panther parties, have also incorporated breakfast programs. So like I said, use older organizations as a resource. Look to them for what they've done if you're really stuck on narrowing down what problem it is that you want to fix and how you want to go about fixing it. If you really want to focus on COVID-19, you can pull from some of our African family organizations that we have on the continent. The PAIGC, for example, started a sustainable COVID-19 testing program so that Africans on the continent could get tested. We just talked about that yesterday in my work study. So whatever your problem is, there's got to be an organization out there that unfortunately has already tried to figure out how to deal with it, because it's not like these problems are brand new. They've been abusing our communities for decades, right? So look to our ancestors for how they've gone about helping. And if you're really trying to figure out what that looks like, don't forget our comrades in Cuba have been very instrumental in helping us figure out how to get the antiviral treatment out to different countries, and Cuban doctors have also been traveling to help with COVID-19 crisis. So just don't forget that there are resources out there. Within your plan, you should come up with ideas for how you would suggest addressing the problem, and make sure to think about this outside of this capitalist framework. So I want you to think about things where it's actually benefiting humanity to go about giving solutions. Don't try to think about ways where profit is the center. Try to think about ways where humanity is ultimately getting what they need, because money is no object when it comes to humanity, right? And so really try to reframe yourself and try to unlearn what society has taught us needs to be the focus. Try to be specific as possible about this, and try to provide details explaining why the problem exists. Provide explanations and communities and sub-communities and groups that may be a part of the problem or a part of the solution in this problem being eradicated. If you want to map out how the problem came to be, then those detailed steps make it easier and more organized later when your creation of the vision comes in for why you need to solve this problem. Next slide, please. All right, so this is step 5, strategize with others in your organization. We talked about this last week, about ways to recruit more people from the neighborhood so that you can figure out how you're gonna synthesize and focus on whomever is interested in making something happen and implementing an action. So this is important because let's say your problem that you all agree on is that there's some type of threat in the neighborhood. You can define threat however you want to, but maybe there's a person who's abusing children. Maybe there's a person who's abusing people of color. Maybe there's a person abusing women identifying. So this threat needs to be dealt with. So maybe you decide that you want to offer some community defense courses to those that feel like they want to figure out how to have some defensive mechanisms in place. And then you can all develop community protective tactics together, because you're organizing defense strategies together and learning defensive strategies together for how you're going to engage. And if necessary, how do you figure out how to protect one another and actually implement self-defense and community defense strategies if this threat becomes physical or maybe another form of danger? It could also mean organizing the people who are most at risk, yes, but also engaging to recruit bystanders, okay? So yes, we wanna focus on the people who are most at risk, obviously, but we also need to get the bystanders, because the more people that we have standing with the masses, the more incapable it's going to be for the threat to be able to stand on their own 2 feet without having pressure. And as we say, pressure is what builds up and makes the pot overboil, right? So we wanna make sure that whoever is doing the threatening feels extremely uncomfortable, because everyone in the community is on the same agenda, that person either A, should not be there anymore, or B, needs to cease giving the threat as soon as possible. And as long as that threat is ceased, then there won't be any further consequences. But if that person doesn't understand that the community means business, and notice how I'm saying community and the group and collective, and I'm not saying JoJo, right? Notice how I'm saying that it really needs to be a united front to help this person understand you can't do that anymore. We don't tolerate it. We don't accept it. It stops today. Well, what am I going to do if I'm not sure how that's not my problem. That's not our problem. We just know that we're here today and we're asking you to stop. And if you don't, there's going to be some consequences. And we've heard my dad give this example of different community defense organizations that he's been a part of, where they have collectively walked up to the person causing the problem and agitated that person and said, we have decided that your behavior is unacceptable. So you can't do that anymore. Well, what am I gonna, well, if you do it again, then there's gonna be some consequences that might be painful for you. We're just letting you know it stops today. And in some cases, people get the message. And in other cases, you have to be ready to act. And again, that's where that community defense comes in. So you need people who are serious, and you need people who are dedicated. Most importantly, you need to build on that dependability and reliability, right? And you'll figure that out as you're starting to tease through what the problems are, because you'll start to see who's serious and who's just in it for whatever realm of temporarily, I don't even know what the word is, but you'll figure out who the serious people are and who they're not. And if you're not sure about that, maybe you could just sit back and observe and just watch how people react when the discussion part takes place, because that'll help you with that too. So some methods to help you do this would include collecting data. So what do I mean by that? You need evidence, you need resources, you need tools to help you make a strategy for how you're going to build a collective vision. So again, maybe that means going to the community and asking the people what their problems they experience are. That's the best way to get the evidence, is to talk to the people who are most at risk and ask them, what do you want to see fixed? Why is this a problem for you? If you had 50 million people to help you fix a problem, what would you ask them to do? And just go from there. In public health, we call that community-based participatory research. There's no better way to figure out how to fix community issues than to talk to the people that live there, right? So maybe you could go about doing it that way. As I said, organize the people most impacted by the problem so they can stand with you, but also they can tell you if your solution is feasible or not. Because as I said, they live in that neighborhood, so they know what kind of resources they have. They know what kind of access to this and that, and how other things might get in the way of that. So allow them to be in on that conversation so that they can tell you if this is realistic or not. And then just to give you two quick examples, and I'll turn it back over to my dad. If you were trying to see how this looks in a real life situation, I can give you two examples. So the first is, I'm in a graduate organization on my campus, and we created our graduate organization because we were trying to figure out how we could get the department to give us more money when we travel, reimbursement travel. And then also, how do we get more money in these in between periods when our financial aid checks are not coming in as fast as they can? So sometimes there's issues with the loan office where it was 3.5 months before students got their reimbursement financial aid checks. And yeah, it sounds really privileged for me to say I'm waiting for a reimbursement check, but I'm literally going the whole summer without income. So you have to think about how I'm waiting on that check so that I can pay my bills and catch up on things, right? And I know some grad students who were evicted because they didn't have income. So it's a pretty serious thing. So we went to our department chair and talked to them about the issue with that. We talked to them about how school has already started. So technically we're already laboring and working in the classroom, but yet there's no money until the following month. So we're working for a whole month before we get our first paycheck, and just trying to figure out how is there a better way to deal with that? And is there a way that they can actually give some more money off to the side so that students don't have to go without having complete income for the whole summer? And so what happened was we brought it up in every meeting that we could. That was one strategy we had. So we first established the problem, then we brought it up in every meeting that we could. We asked to have separate meetings. We each met with our advisors and talked to them about it. And before you know it, it was a snowball of why this was such a problem, right? And so the same problem kept coming up. And there's so many other things that we're still fighting for, but we were able to get an email earlier last week that said there's going to be an increase in travel pay next fall. So that's one of the goals that we wanted, and we saw it happen. And then we're also getting an increase in our stipend. So we still have a lot more organizing and a lot more work to do, but that's great that that happened because we were able to organize and use our graduate experiences to remind them, you all need us because we're teaching a majority of these classes. You're already not giving us healthcare benefits. The least you could do is help us have some income over the summer. And so just thinking about what that looks like. And then if you need another example that's more community-based, just really quickly, as you all have heard before, I'm involved with the Breastfeeding Sisters that are receiving support. So that is an organization based out of Memphis. It's B-Stars for short. And so I have been a part of B-Stars for 6 years now. And this organization is a African-based breastfeeding support group for African moms. We do help other families of color, but we focus on African women because we know that we have some of the lowest breastfeeding rates and we're trying to address that. So B-Stars is known for offering this 3K walk in August because that's when we celebrate African Breastfeeding Week. But B-Stars 6 years ago started introducing a community baby shower because they saw the problem and that a lot of African families do not have access to car seats. They don't have income to get strollers. They don't have income to get diapers, okay? And so B-Stars said, that's a problem. We need to figure out how to address that. So then they started working with different communities that had a higher population of African families. That's where the baby shower was held for for the last 4 years was in a predominant African community. And of course, with the pandemic, we were able to have the baby shower just early February of last year, and then everything shut down. So this year, we had our first virtual baby shower. And I bring that up to tell you that whether it's infrastructure, whether it's weather, or whether it's a pandemic, you always want to try to plan for anything that can get in the way of your organizing, because when you get in the way and you disrupt the organization, it disrupts, your ability to do the work. And you don't need anything to disrupt it, because it's already a sensitive thing, and we need as much consistency as possible, because that's how you protect being organized in the organization. I hope that makes sense. I thank you all so much. I appreciate you, and I'll turn it over to my dad now.
All right. Thank you for that foundation, as always, Shukura. And I just want to take us in the direction, just dial us back a bit and talk about, Shukura laid some good philosophical framework for how things happen. And I just want to take us through what those things look like on a case-by-case basis. And then just to remind people, like, the book is talking about organizing from a revolutionary standpoint. We have to constantly say that, because our training is bourgeoisie based. So our thinking is developed to think in terms of, like, how do we do things within the context of this system? Even if we're not conscious of that, that's how we think of things. So we're trying to smash that, because we know it doesn't work. So just keep that in mind as we go through these next steps. So we're talking about, you have your vision, your plan, you have all of that we talked about last week and that Shukura went over. So the question is, how do you begin talking to people about organizing in a neighborhood? Like, what steps do you take? And the first thing we want to say in terms of what it looks like is you have to develop your talking points, what you're going to go door to door and talk to people about, what you're going to talk to people about in these neighborhoods. And strongly urge that those talking points be based in an anti-patriarchal empowerment context. Why? Because the system of capitalism exploits on a hierarchical basis. It has its appendages of exploitation and oppression. White supremacy is certainly a main appendage of capitalism and imperialism. Patriarchy is another main appendage. Homophobia is another appendage. So we want to have talking points that are inclusive of people. We're trying to build a mass movement. We talked about this last week. We're African people. Our culture is collective. We're not trying to build a selective movement. If that's what you're trying to do, then you're not functioning within the context of your culture if you're African or you're indigenous, because that's not how we do things. We're collective peoples. So we're trying to recruit everybody. We believe that the masses of people make history. We don't believe individuals make history. So that means we're trying to recruit everybody. We don't know, you don't know who the next Marcus Garvey or Assata Shakur or Malcolm X is. They could be walking down the street right in front of you. You don't know that. So we're trying to recruit everybody to increase our odds of finding those people and getting them engaged in the struggle. So that means our language has to be inclusive. We have to talk in a way that's attractive to everybody in the community that we're doing work in. If we go in the community talking about, well, we need to liberate the Black man, well, if that's not how you identify yourself, that's not going to be something that you're going to want to embrace or be a part of. And so it has to be inclusive language. And of course, that means your analysis has to be inclusive, which means, as we've said repeatedly, your educational foundation has to be inclusive. But assuming all of those things are in place, as the book humbly asks you to do, then yeah, when you get to the point where you're going out and talking to people, you have to have inclusive talking points. You have to be able to talk to people in a way that resonates with everybody in that neighborhood, so that people can feel like this is our work. This is something that we can be a part of. This is what the work that we can own. And so once you develop your talking points, here is just a quick example of what a talking point would look like. You knock on a door, somebody answers. My name is Ahjamu. Hi, my name is Ahjamu. I'm an organizer with the All African People's Revolutionary Party. We wanted to ask you what concerns you would like to see addressed in your neighborhood. Now, that's it, you all. Like, a lot of you think you have to have some Malcolm X inspired speech when you knock on somebody's. No, you don't. You just need to have a quick talking point, because again, we've talked about before, You want the community to do the majority of the talking. This is about their neighborhood. It's not about you. So you don't need to be having these slick, extensive talking points. You're just going to ask a simple, open-ended question, as was just demonstrated. And then learn how to ask the question and be quiet, you all. Stop talking. Stand there with open body language and give the people the space to respond, because that's the important thing. That's what we're shooting for. So we have to learn that. Like, a lot of us don't know how to stop talking. We just keep talking because we're insecure, or we don't really feel like we know what we're doing, or who knows what the problem is. But we have to learn not to do that. Just ask the question and wait for an answer. And so you'll find that people will give you an answer. People are not stupid. They will answer the question. A lot of us we're just dominated by these bourgeois ideas. And we think, well, if I knock on someone's door, they're going to tell me to go away. And the only people that think like that are people who haven't done it. I've knocked on thousands of doors, so I know that's not true. When I knock, I've never had anybody, when I knock on a door and ask them a question like this, tell me that I have to get away from their door. I've never had anybody say, all African People's Revolutionary Party, get away from here. Even when Europeans answer and I tell them that, they don't say that. Once they hear, because people want to know what your program is. What are you doing? They're not shallow just because of a name that they know they don't understand. They're going to reject you based on that. That's what some of you all do. That's not what the masses of people do. They want to hear your program. So when you ask the question, they want to answer, because they got to deal with these problems every day. So they have an answer. So give them the opportunity to provide it. And don't be thinking, well, if I tell them I'm with the A-APRP, they're not going to want to. Fight that bourgeois stuff in your head. That's not based in reality, you all. No, the mass of people don't care about that. They're trying to make it from day to day. You think they're going to be that concerned about that? They're concerned about what you're talking about when you come to their door. So focus on that. And besides, everybody's trying to just figure out, well, how can I do this without making people uncomfortable? They're already uncomfortable. Everybody's if you're not uncomfortable, something wrong with you. So stop worrying about that. Everybody's uncomfortable. So stop trying to figure out ways to make people uncomfortable. The only way to make people uncomfortable is to help people get free. That's how you make people lose their uncomfortability. So stop worrying about that and focus more on coming from a position of truth. And if you do that, I guarantee you'll relax more. You won't be so self-conscious and so have so many insecurities. The insecurities happen because you're trying to be something that you're not. Just be yourself. And that'll come across when you knock on somebody's door. So you knock on their door and you tell them who you are and you ask them that question, and they will answer. And they will tell you whether it's predators, police, whether it's lack of education, food desert, all of those things. They will tell you those things. And then you can log them. You can document them so you can know. And you can figure out how you're going to approach organizing them. But it has to come, again, from this revolutionary political education foundation. Because if you don't have that, then you won't understand any of the things I just got through talking about. And you'll have the bourgeois ideas in your head will be dominant when you're knocking on people's doors. And it'll really get in the way of you being able to effectively talk to people and build capacity, even though you won't necessarily know why you're having a struggle. That's what it'll be. I can tell you all truthfully, all the years I've been doing this, I've never had a problem getting people interested and engaged. I have had a problem getting the people I'm working with to get over their bourgeois notions and knock on people's doors, because people are afraid of people. Because capitalism tells you, well, if you go in the inner city, you knock on the door, somebody's going to shoot you. And we believe that. We believe what our enemies have told us about our own people. So I have had a problem getting people to work through that nonsense, but there's never been an issue with people at the doors, responding positively to the approach that you make when you make it like this. People always want to do this. They're looking for a solution. And here you come knocking on the door. That's the most beautiful thing in the world. But if you don't have the Revolutionary Political Education Foundation, you'll miss that whole thing. And it'll keep you from being able to help contribute to a beautiful thing. And we don't want that. And that's another reason why you have to practice your talking points extensively. Practice what you all are going to say with each other, you all, because you are nervous. You're not used to talking to the masses of people. You're used to a bunch of, no offense, but BS conversation. You're used to putting on a face because that's how we're trained in capitalism. We're used to representing yourself in a way that doesn't really represent yourself. So you have to practice the talking points so you can work through all of that and just be yourself and be with the people and reach that level of peace and comfort that you are doing the work that the ancestors put you here to do. So you have to practice so you can get to that point. I know people don't like to role play, but it's very important because if you don't do it, you won't have that comfortability when you go to the doors. Unless you've done a lot of it before, you won't have that. And I already know not a whole lot of us have done a lot of what I'm talking about here before, because if we had, we would be a whole lot farther than we are right now. So don't try to come and tell me, because everybody will come and say, oh, I've already done this. I've done, yeah, well, then why are we where we're at right now? So clearly that's not true. For whatever reason, people feel like they have to exaggerate. But where we are, practice these talking points. Please do that. And then don't make excuses. Just go out and start knocking on doors. Look, David Brothers, who was a longtime A-APRP Central Committee member and was the founder of the Brooklyn Black Panther Party, he used to tell me all the time, young brother, you can't mess up the revolution. You're going to make errors. Make them. You'll grow stronger from that. Stop trying to not make mistakes. And I understood that from being an athlete. I understood that because if you play sports, you know that if you get hurt and then you get back on the field or the court and you're worried about getting hurt, guess what? You're going to get hurt. The best thing that you have to do is get yourself to a mental place if you're physically healed where you're ready to go all out. And that's how you're going to be able to be effective. And so I understood what David Brothers was telling me from that standpoint, and I executed that in my work. So don't make excuses. People, you'll find when you do this, you'll find people I don't think we're ready to talk to the people. Like, what do you mean you're not ready to? You're going to the people to say we need to solve these problems that nobody is going to deny exist. What are you talking about? You're not ready to talk to the people. Stop letting this bourgeoisie stuff get in your way and go out and talk to your people. It's 2021. It's far past time for us to be afraid of our own people. Get out there and talk to your people. Please do this. Please do this. So, and then, there are a couple of comments talking about May Day, of course, yesterday, International Day of the Worker, absolutely. And then another comment saying that people need to be in organizations for this effort. Of course, if you come here, that's what we say 5,000 times every week. This is all based on organization. Nobody can do anything individually. So there's no question about that. So no excuses. Get to work and then develop, again, a script that includes all the information stated. And then when you get through with your brief conversation, you always want to end it with a clear ask. In other words, you ask them, what are the problems? They told you. You talked about it. You've asked them, well, like Shukura said, well, what would you like to see happen to address these problems? They've told you. You've talked about it. Now you have to ask them, what are you willing to do to address these problems? You have to ask that question, you all. We are so afraid of our own people. We don't want to ask our people that. But you've got to ask them, what are you willing to do to address these problems we've talked about? And you will find that they will not hesitate in telling you. Now, you, of course, will have people that will go on, and, well, I'm too busy. Well, then those people just ain't serious. You can just go on to the next person. But you will have people who will tell you, like, I would love to do something. I can make phone calls. I can I can cook for this. I can help people learn. I can organize events, meetings. Okay, there you go. You've got your first recruit there. That's why you have to ask the question. If you don't ask that question, how do you know who you're going to have to work with you? You've got to ask that question. You've got to get over your fear and ask that question to people. And the way you get over the fear is by practicing. That's how you get over it. That's why all of those steps are important. Okay, so talking to the people, moving forward. So again, another element that eliminates your uncertainty is you have to make sure everything you're saying is 100% honest. And one of the main mistakes people always make in movement work is, and it's not intentional, but we lie to people. We lie to people all the time because we want to make people happy. That's a lot of the reason why we're in this work. We want to make people, we see the suffering our people experience and we want to make people feel good. But you are not addressing that by lying to people. So don't do things like, don't tell people, yeah, we're coming in here, we're going to organize and solve these problems. You're not going to solve any problem. The people are going to solve the problem. The masses of people make history. And so people always feel like they're ashamed to tell people like, well, how many people you got? And you don't want to tell people, well, I don't have anybody except one other person, or I just have myself. People don't want to tell people that because we're so imbued with these bourgeois ideas that we have to, again, represent something that doesn't exist. Learn how to be truthful with yourself and the masses of our people. Tell them the GD truth, you all. I don't have nobody. You're the first door I've talked to. You're the first person. I'm trying to build something with you. I can't do this by myself, or else I wouldn't have bothered wasting your and my time knocking on your door. I need you. That's why I asked you, what are you willing to do? Because I'm trying to see who in this neighborhood we can get together to work with to address these problems. So I got me, and hopefully I got you. What do you think? That's all you got to do, you all. There's no crime in that. That's the truth. And you will be shocked how well people respond to the truth because people are sick of BS. They want the truth. And you're coming to them telling them, look, they're not stupid. They see you knocked on their door. You're taking time out of your life to come to them. So that has to mean something. So they're going to give you that same level of respect and say, well, I can contribute 3 hours a week to this. Okay, you got started. But that starts by you telling them the truth. You are not going to solve the problem without them. Stop trying to make it sound like you got something. Stop trying to make it sound like you have this big functional apparatus. You're not fooling them. If you had that, you wouldn't need to come talk to them. It doesn't even make any sense. So tell them. That's why I'm here to talk to you. I don't have nobody else. But you and I can build that. Don't you know people in this neighborhood? I know everybody in this neighborhood. Okay, well then that's how we're going to get the people. There you go. But it starts with that truth. And that making sure you articulate that. We want to build communities that are responsible for each other and the entire world. You have to constantly repeat that because we've got to get away from this individualistic capitalist bourgeoisie narrative that, well, I got a friend who's got a financial service. He can teach people how to save money. Okay, that's great. And that can be a part of your project, but that is not the solution to our people's suffering. Understand that clearly. So we've got to keep the solution collective and mass-based. It has to be that. It cannot just become a thing of bringing in petty bourgeoisie professionals to use their skills and make money off of the people suffering. Then we're no different than the people that are already here. We don't want to do that same thing. So you have to keep it mass. And then whatever success you have in the work, it's based on you making a commitment and staying consistent with that commitment, and that you make it clear to the people you're talking to that you need them to do the same thing. And you have to be willing to talk to people about that. You can't avoid it because it's uncomfortable. That's the problem now. We all don't want to be uncomfortable, but in order for us to get where we need to be, there's got to be, as Shukura said, a ton of discomfort. And take it from me, it's not easy, but you will feel better in the long run when you're honest with people. When you just tell people, look, I need to know I'm going to be committed to this, and I need to know that you're going to be committed to this. So if we say we're going to meet once a month and we're going to do these things 2 or 3 times a month, I need to know that you're going to do it. And if you don't do it, then I can call you on it. You'll feel much better when you tell someone that, because they'll respond and say, no, I'll do it. And then that will, right there, that conversation creates a higher level of accountability. Unless you're just talking to a straight up liar. But 99.9% of the time, that's not the case. You're talking to people who are sincere, who just want to know how to work with people to get things done. So that helps you reach that level of accountability. So do that. Please do that in the conversation. And then again, it's important to flush out with people what it is they're willing to do to help with this work. And that's important because that's how you find out not only their interests, but their skill sets. Like people, like I was talking to this brother today, and he told me, well, I'm a musician. So I said, okay, so you have context about organizing events. He's like, I have all the content. Okay, there you go. I know that. In 10 seconds of conversation with this guy, I know that this guy knows how to get venues. He knows how to get performers. He knows how to do all that stuff. He knows how to promote stuff. Okay, I know that. So that's why you have to ask those questions so you can know what kind of skills people have and you can factor that into your plan. Very important. Very important. So these are all critical points. And we're just going to look here and say, that people have some comments. So we're going to give us a chance to check and see what some of those might be. Still trying to get in here and see that. Okay. So, yeah, people are just more or less agreeing with the points. And that's good. I mean, it's just going to be important, you all, that you practice all of these things. That's the whole purpose of the book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence, to give people a toolkit that we have to practice. And if we do that, these things are proven. They do work, and they will help us get together. And as always, all of these things we're telling you about, we're not just telling you about them, and then it's up to you. You got to figure out how to do it on your own. As I've said many times, and I'll continue to say, we are here to help you through these steps. We'll provide trainings to you. We'll help you figure out how to implement your plan. We'll do all that. And we'll show you how to reach out to us if you're serious about doing that in just a moment. And some people have done that. A few honest people have done that. I see my friend, for example, I don't want to call them out, but they deserve this credit because they're serious about the work that they do. I see my friend Shan on here. I met Shan just through doing this work, just through doing these workshops. And Shan is involved in very serious work where that person lives. And I've been able to connect with them, and we've done I think 1 or 2 workshops, and we're planning on doing some larger, bigger ones to help them engage this work. And so this is what this is all about, y'all. This is exactly what we're gonna want to do. Again, didn't write the book for people to stand around and, well, I have a degree from MIT and organizing on a bourgeois level, I think would be a wondrous thing. That's not why this happened. This is about organizing grassroots capacity for us to topple this backward system and build a mass society where people can build for justice. So, yeah, let us help you do that if you need help. We love to do that. And so we just want to close out by saying, I hope you understand we wanted to give you a couple of things that can help you. If you do the things we talked about today, guaranteed they will help you. And I said, again, we'll help you implement those things if you need that help. I don't know what else we can do to help us with this work. The only thing we need to do now is just take the steps to do it. So if you're not in an organization, that's the first step. And if you're in an organization, implementing a mass political education program is the second step. Again, we'll help you do that. You should join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. It's there in the middle of the screen on the left, www.aprp-intl.org. All of this is coming from the A-APRP. So if you're African and you like that, then join the A-APRP. If you're not African, join some other organization working for justice. If you don't have one or see one, and you're not African or you're African or whatever, then you should start today that I wish this guy hadn't written this book organization. And if you do that, you're going to need political education for your I wish this guy hadn't written this book organization. And even though you're hating on us and you're hating on my book, I am saying publicly, I'll help you build a political education program for the I wish you hadn't written this book organization. And you don't even have to put this book or any of the books we're talking about on your book list. But if you're reading materials that are going to help you liberate communities, we will help you do that. And we will even tell everybody in your group, do not read our book, read your books only, but do the work for liberation. So do that and go to abetterworld.me. That's our site. That's my site. You can get all of these videos there if you missed it or you want to pass it along to someone. Also, that's the appropriate place for hate mail. A lot of you already know that because I get plenty of it there. So you can do that there. And there's articles there. I just wrote one today about, I read this book, essays, I can't even remember the name of the book now, Black Power and Post-Colonialism. So I wrote a review on that book there, so you can read that there. And then I'm one of the editors for the Hood Communist Collective. This is an outstanding collective of revolutionary material. We're going to have a theme next month on African Liberation Day. We had a wonderful Telegram discussion Thursday night, so we'll be letting you know about those events here as they happen. And this is a wonderful group of revolutionaries from A-APRP, Black Alliance for Peace, Ujima, People's Progress Party, Black Hammer. You should support independent revolutionary African organizations. That's what we're doing, is trying to build that capacity. So Hood Communist, Twitter, shut down our account. You know that's not going to stop us. So you all should sign up for the Hood Communist newsletter and sign up and support Hood Communists. You should do that. It's very important, you all. And then we have a number of A-APRP broadcasts. We have the Pantula podcast. Look that up, A-APRP. It's wonderful. We have the Forward Ever podcast. Look that up. It's wonderful. Every Thursday, our comrades in New Mexico have the A-APRP weekly news, 11 a.m. Mountain Time. That is outstanding. You want to check that out. We, of course, are here every Sunday at 4 p.m. And next Sunday, May 9th, we're going to do our last installment on the book. And it's going to be Organizing 101, Tools to Maintain Your Organizing Momentum in Healthy Ways. There are so many organizing spaces that have so much toxicity and negativity. So we're going to talk next week about the tools we use, which I discuss in the book, to help you eliminate those things. So tell a friend. And finally, we want to invite you to African Liberation Day on May 22nd and 25th. There's an international webcast. And as I mentioned, Hood Communist theme for May is going to be African Liberation Day. We believe that African Liberation Day is an institution for African liberation, freedom, and forward progress and unity, Pan-Africanism. So put that on your calendar, please. May Day and African Liberation Day. I don't celebrate birthdays. I don't celebrate Miss Christ. I don't celebrate the 4th of July. I don't celebrate Thanksgiving. I don't celebrate none of that nonsense. But I do celebrate May Day and African Liberation Day. So please put that on your calendar, because those days are not about me. They're about the masses of humanity. And finally, buy a guide for organizing defense against white supremacist, patriarchal, and fascist violence. It's only $8. And the reason it's only $8 is so you can't say I can't afford to buy it. You cannot exist in capitalism. You got $8, y'all. You know you got $8. Buy it. We use the money to advance our struggle. That's what we use the money for. Nothing else. It's not a lot of money because it's only priced at $8 anyway. But it's a good tool to help you get organized. You can buy a bunch of copies for your group and you can build with that. So we encourage you to do that. We definitely hope you come back next week. Please look at all these wonderful resources that we provided for you here. They're all necessary. They cannot exist without your support. So please tell people about all of these things. That's very important. We want to thank you again for being here. We hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday afternoon. Forward ever, backwards never. Always stay clever in any and all endeavors. One unified socialist Africa. Smash and destroy patriarchy. Smash and destroy homophobia. White supremacy, y'all already know, it's got to go. Forward ever. Have a great rest of your Sunday evening.